I want to start with a question to you. So what do all of these issues have together? We're speaking today a little bit about headache, digestive disorders, cell damage, and so on. These have together electromagnetic fields. This is what's putting them all on a common ground. Independent study shows that EMFs are having effects on a variety of our body functions. So today, this is what we are going to talk about, and I hope I'm giving you some interesting information about this. So these are some of the most common sources of EMFs in our daily life. Our computers, cell phone towers, tablets, smart gadgets. This is what we're talking about. This is producing EMFs. Oops. The official problem, what we are talking about, for instance, with the World Health Organization, is that all of these devices, for instance, mobile phones, are creating heat, so a thermal effect in our body when we are using them. But apparently, this is not the whole story. So let's look into that a bit deeper. So we have a couple of hundreds of studies which are showing that EMFs are not only having thermal effects, but that they are also having non-thermal effects. And there's a lot of studies about this where we can look into this, and a few of this I'm going to walk you through today. The most common question I get asked in the last year when I'm speaking about the subject is, why are we still exposed to this if it's really dangerous? To make a small comparing, I wanted to take you on a small excursion to smoking. In the 1920s, I guess no one of us remembers that, but at the same time, there was broadcasted and advertised that smoking is still beneficial for calming our mood, for keeping our nerves in checks. And we had such commercials where it was even advertised for pregnant women and from sportsmen, Olympics, and doctors. The thing is, at the time, when we compared this, especially now, to EMFs, we could look at EMFs for just creating a thermal effect in our tissue when we are exposed to a telephone call. But the thing is, there is much more side effects. Like in smoking, we have also particles which stay inside our body, which are having long-term effects, and we know now that is a possible cause of cancer, which is rated for. The same rating from the World Health Organization is having EMFs nowadays. Many don't know that. It's also already declared as possibly cancer-causing. So why are we still exposed to such things if it's dangerous for us? Well, we have here a few dates on the left, which we can look at. So in the 20s, we just saw the commercials, which we have been seeing all, and it took until 1957 until in the US there was the public position taken that it's actually possibly cancer-causing. And then it was at 65 when we started to have some warning labels on the packages, and we're still having smokers today. So we have to make conscious choices ourselves what we want to be exposed to. Here we have some of the leading biohackers and health influencers, which I guess many of you know, what they are saying about EMFs. We have Ben Greenfield's, when you're constantly bombarded in these manners by EMF waves, it can not only be distorted your eternal cellular communications, but also entrain your body. We have Dave Asprey, which is saying that it has effects on DNA, genes, and so on. So here we have a few of these examples on what possible effects on health there can be. So why is it when we're here at a Biohack Summit that such people are making such strong recommendations that we need to protect ourselves? So this is what we're going to speak today about. Here we are seeing a couple of diseases and symptoms which we can have and how they're correlating to the distance of how far away we live and affected we are by cell phone towers. What's very clear to see that we see this ratio that the further we go away from the cell phone towers, the lower usually also the symptoms become. We see that it's affecting headaches, appetite losing, and depression. And what I'm hearing most of the time is that the biggest effect is actually also sleeping disorders. Many people don't know that they have a huge problem with sleep, and they think their sleep quality is just what it is and it cannot be changed. But as soon as you start taking some changes into your life and start limiting the exposure of EMFs, then we're actually starting to see also a sleep improvement. I want to introduce you to this researcher, Martin Paul, who graduated from the Johns Hopkins University, and want to walk you a bit through the studies because I get asked, how is it possible that we're still exposed to this and that there is such non-thermal effects of EMFs? And this has something to do with the voltage-gated calcium channels. So now there comes a little bit deep part, but we all had a good relaxing session before, so let's go a little bit into the deep science of this. By the way, I put here the QR code, and most of the sources are also in this presentation, so if you want to dig in a little bit deeper, then you can do that. What we are seeing here is our cellular level. And we have here the voltage sensors. And this part is basically in every of our cells. And as soon as we are affected by electromagnetic fields, even in the very low quantities, we're triggering this sensor. According to some calculations, this sensor is 7.2 million times more sensitive to EMFs than other parts of our bodies, which we could consider than our average. What happens if this sensor is triggered is that there is calcium rushing into our cells and causing a disease process, which we are starting to look at. So here we have this chain reaction, what is happening. We are having the opening of the cell channel, calcium is starting to flow inside, and in the end, we are producing free radical oxidative stress, and we are having pathophysiological effects starting. So what that means is it's the process of when a disease is starting to be created. All the effects which we just saw above in the correlation to the mobile phone towers could be also explained with just this effect. All non-thermal biological effects could be explained with this principle, what has been just studied. It has been studied by over 13 studies, just this particular part, and it's showing us that there is non-thermal effects inside of our body, and that it's causing basically in every cell in our body a different function, and that it can even lead to cell death. How do we protect ourselves from that? First of all, I want to recommend you that you turn off your cell phones into flight modes when you don't use them. So for all of the people now, already first action which we can stay, it's a very cheap, free biohack. Turn off your phones into flight modes when you're not using them and start using more text or voice messages for communication, do less cell phone calls, and for instance, also I highly recommend to shut down the Wi-Fi routers at the evenings. The second part is shielding. We have a possibility of shielding ourselves with special fibers, silver protection clothes even, and they are usually giving this electric fields, if they're worked right, they're decreasing the field strength inside the room so that we are living in an EMF-free environment. And the part 3, which I want to explain to you today a little bit more, is called depolarizing. Many of you, I think, have not heard of this, so this is what we're going to look now a little bit more into. Basically, we could consider this to be called natural EMFs versus man-made EMFs. they're having a big difference. What we are looking here at now is basically a principle which has been studied by Professor Panagopoulos from the University of Athens, and he has found out that we can depolarize EMFs by sending them through liquids. This is, for instance, how we can imagine that. We are bringing in a wave through a liquid, and what is happening, it's starting to disperse that radio wave onto a wider area. By this, measurably, the field strength is dropping lower so that we are exposed less in total, and that the exposure is more spread out across our whole body and not anymore just on one point. This is basically the principle of depolarizing. We from Waveguard, we have created some products which follow this principle of the university to depolarize EMFs, which lower field strengths and which can reach up to 80% reduction, for instance, of 5G radiation, which is also leading and protecting you from sources from the outside, which is usually the most difficult part, because we are having now a lot of exposure to ourselves, which we don't have any control about. What I want to show you now is a study which we have already published, which you can look up and find also on our website. It was the first study on 5G which was ever done and published on basically biological effects. So my company was doing the study, and we were looking at human skin cells and how they heal themselves, the wound healing effect. And we also knew from the study of the University of Athens that such effects shouldn't be happening anymore so strongly if we are having a depolarized radiation which we are exposed to, so a more natural one, versus the one which we are originally and the normal life scenarios being exposed to. So what we are having now is, you're gonna see now the actual footage of the study, which is a time-lapse video under the microscope of how cells are healing when they're in a natural environment, how they are healing when they're exposed to 5G, and when they are healing with a depolarized radiation. So as we can see, the cell healing process, which is of course not now real time, but this is literally 24 hours of healing process where we are seeing how cells are dividing and closing the gap. Normally, it takes 24 hours when there is no EMFs inside the room to close the gap, and it takes up to 4 days when we're exposed to 5G radiation. I haven't introduced myself, and since it's the last minute running here, I just wanted to give you a few information still about me. Founder of Waveguard. I'm born 30 years ago here in Dubai, and we have today our 9th anniversary of the company. So I'm really proud to be here, and I'm coming from a German engineering company. And why I'm doing all of this happened to me since my youth, since I was electro-sensitive, and I was spending some big time in the Finnish nature in such cottages that I was spending there multiple months and snowshoe hiking around 2,000 kilometers. And there was no cell phone reception, there was no tap waters there, and there wasn't even an air pollution at the time. When I came back to society, I felt the strong reactions on my body, what this is doing to me. And it's about living in natural states. We don't all have the possibility to live in such remote places, and even such remote places are continuing to vanish from our Earth, and we are not having anymore a lot of options where we can go, where we are not exposed to any radiation. So my mission is to make new studies, to continue to be making research in this field, and we have already started doing studies with the Institute of Reproductive Medicine in the United States to see the effects on our reproductive systems, and we are continuing this research, how we can also start to broadcast depolarizing radiation in the first place, so that we are not anymore exposed to it in the first place in a harmful way. All of this led to some credits, and the most proud one I can say is that we have gotten the certification of Invention of the Year in 2022. Thank you very much. For more information, please come visit our stand or go to our website, and we're happy to answer your questions.